Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2019 wrestling drama, Fighting with My Family. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Brock for yet again requesting another review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Fighting with My Family is a WWE production, along with, I think, a couple other production studios. So it has the blessing of WWE because it's based on a WWE superstar. It's based on the, not necessarily the rise of wrestler Paige, but it's based on her journey to the WWE. It's mostly focused on her and her time at the Performance Center, trying to make it as a WWE superstar. And there's a little bit of her at Monday Night Raw, winning the title at the end, and some stuff at WrestleMania. But a lot of it is just her at the Performance Center, just trying to fit in and trying to make her mark. And there are some other scenes that focus on her family and the wrestling promotion back home, as well as stuff involving her brother, Zach Zodiac, and his attempts to try to live his dreams. And it showcases moments where those dreams get derailed. So, in a lot of ways, it's kind of your typical sort of story about someone who came from nothing and then rises above and becomes something special. And in this instance, it has a little bit of a different perspective because it's from the focus of a female wrestler. And you have the female perspective, which is something you normally don't see as much of when it comes to these kind of films. But I got to be honest, I just thought this was just firmly mediocre and just kind of there. And the direction by Stephen Merchant is honestly one of the reasons why it's not anything special. It's funny that this is a movie that has a character played by Vince Vaughn who's just constantly talking about people having an it factor and having something that separates them from other people, and mentioning that certain people don't have that, so they're not gonna make it in the industry. And when you look at the film visually, you're like, well, the direction doesn't have it either. Like, it's just such a bland, just cookie cutter kind of film when it comes to the direction. There's not really a lot of standout moments. It's not like he's doing anything ambitious with the camera work. During the wrestling scenes, what little you do have, they really don't have that extra punch to them visually. They're just kind of flat, and they don't have that extra drive. It's not a total botch, but it's not really anything that is any better than your average match from two average wrestlers. You know, it's that kind of thing where you're watching two average performers in the ring, and maybe they might make a couple moves that are competent enough and show a little bit of skill, but they're not really that great in terms of the chemistry. There are a few moments where they botch a hold, or they botch a move. The finish isn't right. It's that kind of thing where you're like, okay, you know, that's kind of just an average kind of match, or even below that, like not quite house level stuff, but you know, like one of your average, typical, forgettable, competent matches on an episode of Monday Night Raw. You know, it's that kind of thing. And I think for a film like this, there are moments where this kind of approach is fine when it comes to the more dramatic scenes, but when it comes to the moments where you're trying to show the spectacle of the WWE, it doesn't cut it. Like the whole scene involving Paige on an episode of Raw in particular, the way that was shot was just really really weak and just didn't have that spark. Like, you want a scene that's supposed to really showcase and just utilize the larger than life aspect of the WWE, and instead it just looks like a bad cover or a bad remake of the television match. It looks exactly like what they were trying to do is and just make it look like a recreation of the TV match. And I think maybe that was done to try to make it more authentic, but it just made it more obvious that you're watching a movie and you're not seeing something that is technically reality. It took you out. It takes you out of it. It breaks the illusion. And for a film that's based on a true story, it's marketed that way, is trying so hard to be that kind of thing, to have this climactic moment, which is this moment of just amazing fortune and this just grand opportunity for Paige, and to just have it fall so flat is just, to me, is a letdown. And I blame the director for that. It's because of the way that it was shot. It was just not something that really had that spectacle to it. It's a movie that works when it's trying to be a smaller kind of film, dealing with smaller settings, dealing with the family at home, the Paige's family, or dealing with the wrestling gym that Zach is working at, or little moments like that, or some of the stuff at the performance center. But when you get to, like, things are becoming bigger and grander in scope, it just it just kind of falls flat on its face. The film was also written by Stephen Merchant, and the script is fine. I like the fact that it doesn't shy away from showing the reality of wrestling, showing that there are so many other people that are technically gifted, that know their technique well, are in good shape, and can do all kinds of moves, and might kind of look the part, but they lack a certain special factor that makes them stand apart from all the other wrestlers, so they don't make it. And I like that the script was willing to go there with Zach's character and his arc. It was willing to show him be excited and be just really amped for the opportunity to go to the WWE with his sister and try out. And he thought that, I'm the one that's a star back home. I'm the one that has the most skills technique wise. I'm the most polished wrestler between me and my sister. And then he gets passed over. And his sister is the one that gets picked by the WWE because they see that she has this special factor, this special it factor about her that he doesn't have. And he comes face to face with that, like, immediately. He's not picked. He goes in and talks to the guy who works at the command before, at the performance center, and he's all like, "Hey, why didn't you pick me?" It's like, "Because you don't have it, kid." And it's like a car crash. It's like he got hit by a car right then and there. And it's messy and it's ugly. And it leads to him, like, starting to spiral a bit. Goes home, starts drinking too much, starts picking fights at bars, starts losing track of his students at the wrestling school, doesn't want to teach his students anymore, just becomes more and more distant. And all the while, his sister is all the way in the United States, completely out of her own comfort zone, dealing with all this pressure from her family and from the WWE and all this other stuff. And she's dealing with all this when she's only like 19. She's really young. And she's just inundated with all of this stuff. And she's trying to fit in over there. And she's also trying to, mend whatever sort of broken fences have, built up back home. And gets to the point where she almost quits. She honestly thinks about quitting. And I liked that aspect of the script, the dramatic stuff, the real stuff. And yeah, it was kind of fun to see The Rock break out his vintage rock persona and dunk on Paige and Zach for a little bit, be a heel. But there's a lot of stuff though in the film, writing wise, that's just really generic and played out. The stuff with Vince Vaughn's character, who is the guy who works for NXT, at the Performance Center. Um, Hutch Morgan, he's the recruiter and the coach for the WWE. And a lot of the stuff with his character is just one cliche after the next. Complete with him trying to motivate Paige, it not working. Then him having a heart to heart with her where he tells her about his story and why he is where he is and how he doesn't want her brother to be like him and blah 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 blah, and you're just like, okay, all right, where are we going with this? A typical sort of predictable route, right? At least when it comes to the stuff with the family, with Paige's parents, they're irreverent. There's a certain punk nature to them that is appealing. The stuff with Zach, you definitely sympathize with him because everything that he's trained for, everything he spent most of his life for, is completely just torn away from him. And it's not because he failed in the ring, it's because he just lacked some kind of vague it factor. And him having to come to terms with that harsh reality is something that is honestly deeply affecting. And I think contrasting that with Paige's own issues in the United States and with her trying to fit in particular, where she dyes her hair blonde and gets a tan and so on, I feel did create a nice contrast of emotions. But once you get to the point where, okay, she learns to embrace herself and be her true self and puts in the effort and wins over the other girls that she wasn't getting along with earlier, and then goes to WrestleMania and then goes to Raw and wins the title. It's something that really doesn't honestly have the impact that I think it should have had, because so much of it is just so generic, so played out, and at a certain point it stops taking risks. Like, this script is at its best when it's taking risks, when it's like, hey, we're going to show you the reality of wrestling and how that for everyone who makes it, there are tons of other people that don't make it, who have an audition, go to the performance center, but aren't picked. And let's show what that does realistically to somebody's psyche when they get passed over like that. And that is where the script is at its best, when it's dealing with the raw human real emotions of trying to make it in the business. It's not at its best when it's doing, soap opera kind of drama, or when it's just play it safe Hollywood type storytelling where everything's a fairy tale, everything's a happy ending, that kind of stuff. I mean, it got to the point where it was like eye rolling with its schmaltziness at one point. Like, I don't care if it is based on a true story. This is something that is just taking things way too far. Like Zach coaching this one blind kid how to wrestle. Like, you can leave that out of the movie. that, but it's already inspiring enough as it is in terms of the story of Paige. You don't need to have a blind wrestler. And honestly, that's not inspiring to me anyway. That's dangerous. Like, if that was true, like, Zach, what are you doing? Like, that's not inspiring. That's dangerous. Like, that kid is a danger to himself and anyone else in the ring. Like, there's a reason why there aren't any blind wrestlers usually, because so much of wrestling involves actually being able to see. So much of any sort of athletic competition involves being able to see. So I don't see that as inspiring, to be perfectly honest. I think that guy did go on to wrestle, but not probably not very well, and probably not in very many matches. Like, how can you improvise? How can you, like, if something goes wrong in the ring, like, and you can't see anything, how do you, like, fix that in the ring? Like, that's the epitome of a wrestler that, oh, if he knows how to do some stuff, well, then he's going to have to be carried the entire time by another wrestler. But it just felt like something that was made up. Like, even if it was real, it just felt like it was one step too far. But yeah, it's just one of those scripts that it's not terrible by any means. It's at its best when it's establishing the characters, Paige and her family early on, showing their wrestling promotion, the ins and outs of it, then showing Paige and Zach go to the performance center and try out, and then Paige getting picked, and then dealing with the whole fallout of that. But then after that, after Paige makes it, and after she pushes through her personal struggle, her internal struggle, her identity crisis, so to speak, and gains confidence again, then it just becomes typical standard stuff. Now, there is one factor with this film that is consistently solid and something that I legitimately feel is the film's MVP, and it makes sense because she is the one that has the most screen time. In a lot of ways, the film is about her, and that's Florence Pugh as Paige, as Soraya Bevis. Um, I think it's a fantastic performance. I think she anchors the film the best that she possibly can. It's a winning performance. She shows a lot of different nuances with her performance in the film. She's willing to be very emotional, very vulnerable, but also believably strong. And she really is a performer that gives her all here, looks competent in the ring. I don't blame her for how bad the Raw scenes looked. That's not her fault. That's the director. Um, Florence did the best that she possibly could with it, and I guess her stunts during the wrestling scenes were performed by Tessa Blanchard, so she really didn't do a lot of that, but she did a convincing job making you believe and think that she did. And they did a good job hiding the stunt double. Um, but yeah, I genuinely do feel that that is a powerhouse performance. And if there's any reason that I can honestly recommend this film to anybody, it's for Florence Pugh's performance as Paige. Lena Headey's fine too as her mother, and so is Nick Frost as the dad, Patrick. But the other performer that really stands out is Jack Lowden as Zach. I thought he did a great job too. Vince Vaughn was there as Hutch Morgan, just kind of played the typical sort of role that he plays nowadays and has played for the past 5 to 10 years. It's just Vince Vaughn playing Vince Vaughn. But this time around, it's inspirational Vince Vaughn, not funny Vince Vaughn. Dwayne Johnson is in it for a little bit as himself. Had some fun with him, but he's only in it for a brief amount of time. You have James Burrows, who plays Patrick's son, Roy. Hannah Ray, who plays Courtney, Zach's girlfriend. Thea Trinidad is AJ Lee Mendez. Kim Matula is Jerry Lynn. Aquila Zoll is Kirsten. Ellie Gonzalez is Madison. They're the women that Paige ultimately befriends during training. You also have the Big Show, Sheamus, and The Miz that make appearances. There's some uncredited actor who plays John Cena. John Cena shows up in some archival footage. The real Zack Zodiac is in it as a gang lieutenant. Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler, and John Layfield. They provide commentary on the Page versus AJ Lee match. And yeah, a lot of people have pointed out that this historical accuracy is off. Like, it had her start her WWE career performing for NXT when she actually performed in the Florida Championship Wrestling promotion. Paige's time in NXT was kept minimal. They didn't mention her reign as NXT Women's Champion. There were a bunch of characters that were fictional, including Vince Vaughn's character Hutch Morgan. Apparently, Paige had also failed the WWE tryout before being successful in another. Johnson himself never met Paige or any of the Knight family until seeing the documentary. So that's another aspect of the film that was fake. And that felt fake anyway. Like, I forgot to mention that when it comes to the script. Like, the whole bit where The Rock calls her family while they're at WrestleMania and tells Paige's family over the phone that she's going to be in the WWE. She's going to be at WrestleMania. She's going to be at Monday Night Raw. It was just, your baby girl has made it all the way to the WWE. Like, it was so try hard. Like, there was no way that was real. And it wasn't. It wasn't. It was not real. So when it comes to other aspects of the film, the cinematography is nice by Remy Adderfarison. Honestly, I think some of the best shots in the film are just scenes that just focus on Florence Pugh, where she's deep in her emotions and she's introspective and she's just sitting there in her hotel room, and the camera will focus on her emotion and then show the landscape or the setting that she's looking at while she's in the hotel, or some of these other scenes that really are able to showcase some sort of atmosphere. The editing by Nancy Richardson, I thought was fine. It wasn't fantastic, but it was good enough for the kind of film that it was. It definitely wasn't a big budget movie. 11 million. I guess you could kind of see around that much on the screen, but it's definitely not a film that really has a grand or a big feel to it. It does have kind of TV movie vibes at times, like something that would have aired on the WWE network as an original movie. Um, and it's just one of those films where it's fine, but it's fairly forgettable. It's an inspirational story, but maybe it's something that just works better in a documentary because you get to really know the characters more and it's actually based on reality and it's not some fictionalized account of it. And you don't have to worry about, raising the stakes visually, making the wrestling scenes or the scenes where Paige is in the ring for WWE really feel theatrical and have as a big size and scope to them because it's just a documentary. You just show the footage. You just show the real footage. But since it's a film and it's not that big of a budget of a movie, and you got a director who hasn't really done a lot of films before this except for one other movie and some TV shows, you don't really have like somebody who can really utilize or handle that kind of spectacle. So what you get is just kind of kind of a movie that sort of fizzles out at the end. Like it builds momentum enough fine, and then once you get to the big finale, everything's just so schmaltzy and overdone, and then it's coupled with the very mediocre cinematography and direction for the Monday Night Raw scenes and the WrestleMania moments, and then it just it just doesn't get the right finish. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Fighting with My Family. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.